Let's go get Jason. We gotta talk about downloading music. He's a guru. Chuck Norris, list number 1. Do you have a minute to talk about downloading music?
Of course, always have time to talk about music. That's what I do.
Let's go over here.
All right. Okay, cool. So, when most people talk about downloading music, they talk about MP3. And with MP3, it's all about the bit rate. So you probably know that a computer represents data via zeros and ones. And a single 0 or 1 is called a bit. And the bit rate refers to how many of those zeros and ones per unit time is used to either decode or encode a track. The more bits per unit time, the more that the MP3 is going to sound like the original file. If the bit rate's too low, you're going to get what are called artifacts. The MP3 is going to introduce noise that wasn't present in the original source material. Basically, it's going to sound like your music's coming from a digital toilet and not a speaker, and that's not good. So the highest...
Does a digital toilet smell?
A digital toilet smells like, like digital poop, which is actually worse than regular poop, if you can imagine. I don't think we're going to use that. But anyway, the highest available bit rate for an MP3 is 320,000 bits per second, or 320 kbps, or just 320k. By comparison, a CD quality is equivalent to about 1400k. Now the interesting thing is that most people can't tell the difference between a 256k file and CD. And when you get to a 320k file, practically no one can. For fun, you can try comparing different formats and bit rates of the same track at home to see if you can tell the difference. But if you really want to nerd out, you're going to have someone else play them for you so you don't know which is which. Now, to show you some of the different formats that are out there, I'm going to take us to a website called bandcamp.com. Bandcamp's a great website where you can buy music directly from artists themselves. It's mostly used by bands that aren't signed to major labels, so you're not going to find that Fleetwood Mac album you've been looking for, but it's a great way to find out about new up-and-coming artists. And unlike iTunes, Bandcamp allows you to choose what format you download the file in. So you can see there's two options for MP3 here. 320k that we talked about earlier, and V0. V0 is what's called a variable bit rate. That means that the bit rate is going to change depending on how complex the source material is. If you imagine an orchestra and a solo acoustic guitar, the orchestra track's going to be a lot more complicated than an acoustic guitar recording, so it's going to require more bits to sound accurate. So with the variable bit rate, the bit rate lowers or decreases depending on how much is required. There are some other options in addition to MP3 here, like FLAC or FLAC for people like me that don't have time to say 4 syllables. FLAC's what's called a lossless compression format, which means you don't lose any quality in comparison with the original file. But since it's compressed, it's about 2/3 the size of an uncompressed WAV file. Now you can see it's still a lot bigger than a 320k MP3. So one advantage to MP3s is that they're not going to take up as much space. Another disadvantage to FLAC is it's not supported by iTunes, but there is an Apple version called ALAC, which you can see is also available here. Now, as far as storage goes, it's not as much of an issue these days as it used to be, with hard drives becoming larger and larger. There's another format here called AAC. It's a lossy compression scheme like MP3, but has better sound quality at similar bit rates. AAC is used by iTunes and some other apps like YouTube. If you download AAC here, you're going to get a file that's a variable bit rate of about 190k. But it's going to give you similar quality to a 256k MP3 and take up less space. Because of that, I think AAC is a great format if you want to go with a lossy file. The last option is called Ogg-Vorbis, which is another lossy compression scheme. It's supposed to give you better quality than either AAC or MP3, but it's never really taken off, probably because of its awful name, which kind of makes it like the Betamax of digital media. Because it's not that popular, it isn't supported by iTunes or Windows Media Player, but it is supported by apps that are built on the Android platform. That wraps up our guide to downloading music. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and as always, trust your ears.